All right, thank you, everyone. Let's see. Okay. Today I'll be talking about the different phases and what I've kind of picked up and will be referring to as the 7 stages of SGRT adoption. And what gives me a little bit of credibility and standing in this is that we've been in this process now for a number of years across the Canyons region of our health system. Covers pretty much the state of Utah. So it's a wide variety of clinics that are geographically distributed. So we've implemented SGRT in a meaningful way time and time again with a new group of people, new therapists, new physicists, new physicians, and in some cases, actual new equipment that we have a kind of a split geographically between 2 different surface guidance systems. As a clinical user of these, I do really appreciate competition. It kind of keeps everybody sharp and on their toes. The fact that now there's 5 different surface guidance systems that you can go buy today is a good thing for our field. It's a good thing for our patients. It's a good thing for this technology. So everything I'm sharing today is kind of applicable no matter what. It's system agnostic, okay? And at the clinics that we've adopted SGRT, we've been able to push it to its fullest. Tattoo-less, all patients, all sites, all the time. So we've been through this over and over. But the thing that really matters is the patients. You know, we heard the talks this morning about the patient experience, about the impact of tattoos, that this whole process, why go through any stages of SGRT? It's because it matters for the patients. It impacts their care in a meaningful way. And so we're gonna start at the beginning. And we've heard a number of people admit to this already. People in this room, somebody here is the champion. You're enthusiastic, you're gonna wear the bodysuit. You're gonna help make this happen. You wanna show the people the future. There's gonna be other people that have just as much enthusiasm to shut you down and get that thing out of here because it's not broken. There's not a problem. Why are you trying to solve a not problem? Okay? And during this phase, there's a lot of tension. And this is where you wanna go slow. Just learn what you have. Be patient. If you're the champion, and that's where as physicists, you're probably playing that role, is take it easy, okay? Other people don't know nearly as much about these tools as you. You have therapists in your department that have never heard this idea. This is day 0 for them coming to terms with this concept. Meanwhile, you've been here, you've been to other talks, you've been thinking about this for the last 5 years, you've been in the capital planning discussions to acquire a system. This is an opportunity to take advantage, and I'll keep coming back to this because repetition works in education, that there's resources. Other people have been down this road, okay? Start learning about the education opportunities. And then this little one at the bottom, that start indexing at SIM, if you haven't started that, this is when to start. It is independent of your surface guidance system, but later on, it's gonna matter. You can start this today. You don't even have to say it's in service of your surface guidance system. Just say, we're gonna work on simplifying and streamlining and making more reliable our SIM process. Start figuring out the indexing process at SIM. The dividends will come in the future. And during this phase, you just want things to work. You wanna know it's on, it works. Physics can log in, physics can check it. The therapist can do the QA in the morning. Just the basics. People are now starting to talk about it. It exists, okay? Don't give in. During this phase, those people that don't want this, who really are opposed to change, they'll be more vocal during this phase. Hear them out, but do the research. Take advantage of those education resources to point them in the right direction if they're ready to actually learn. Sometimes people just need to vent, but now is the time for you to arm yourself with the knowledge of what's come before you. Okay? Again, the SGRT community has collated nice publication lists based on topics. You can find what you need. You can also go to any of our journals. I particularly love the Journal of Applied Clinical Medical Physics. 64 articles. Whatever the question is, whatever you're curious about, somebody somewhere has done work on that already. We now live in the future where that knowledge is available instead of a question that has not been answered yet. Okay? And once you're ready to move on, it's because you're actually willing to turn the system on with a human on the table. Okay? And that leads to a pause. Okay? And I've seen this time and time again. If you don't respect this next phase, where you need to just let the system exist in your clinic. Let it become a non-threatening part of your clinic that is just there. If you push too hard now, this is when you make enemies. Just relax. Be patient. Let people build comfort. Gain experience with where the buttons are, how the system works. So if you're the champion type who's pushing, relax for this phase. Just let it be, okay? Don't set timelines. Don't pressure people during this phase. Okay? But do something. And this is where we heard speakers earlier this morning mention this. Just having the system on every day for some patients matters enormously. Have it on after you do your normal setups, you do whatever your current workflow is, but just have it watch your patients. That I've referred to this as kind of the super camera phase, where all it's doing is watching the patient in the same way that your cameras always have. You're not threatening anybody, it's just on and doing its job. As therapists gain experience with it, they might start looking at the deltas while they're setting patients up. They might become a little bit curious and casual about, oh, okay, I kind of see how this is working. Okay? The main pitfall during this phase is don't learn how to turn the system off permanently. Don't learn how to disable it. You're gonna have therapists that accidentally forgot again to turn it on in the morning. Oh, we forgot to do this. You're gonna get resistance, and this is where the pause can become the indefinite death. And Sarah, you mentioned this earlier, that some of us have been through that phase where the system existed, but you just kind of got caught right here in the indefinite pause. So don't let that happen. Keep using it. Don't let it be sidelined. And you've heard fantastic and well-established data on less imaging, shorter treatment times. That is all absolutely real. If you start throwing that in people's faces right now, therapists will hate you because they're not there yet. It isn't more efficient. It is in their way. Respect that. Let it be. Okay? And then finally, people will come around and they'll start to ask, well, what about this? How would we do that? Somebody can't have figured that out. Well, probably yes, actually. And this is when you make it to the baby steps. You're actually starting to go, and you can do some things. And the therapists want to know what could be done. Okay? And this is where we've heard a number of different speakers this morning during like the Q&A session this morning. Different clinics will start in very different places in this phase and end in very different places. Does your clinic start with mask patients, with head patients, with SRS patients, with SGRT because they're locked down, they're tight margins, or do they start with breath hold because they want to improve their breath hold treatment? We've had clinics that started with pelvis, whereas we had a speaker, an answerer this morning, say that pelvis was the absolute last thing that they did. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Again, learn what other people have done. Learn how other implementation experiences have gone, and then whichever the path of least resistance is, from your physicians, your therapists, your physicists, your patient population, whatever it is, take that path of least resistance to just make a step. Start using the system in a meaningful way. That you have one workflow, one patient population, whatever it is, where you're using the system as an important part of the workflow. Okay? And this is where it'll naturally become, you're using it enough that using it during the setup phase will also naturally come out. Okay? That spread in knowledge and that previous talk about knowledge versus understanding, that gets bigger during this phase. The ones that don't want to understand have still been able to dig in their heels. Those that do want to understand are understanding, and they're ready to go, go, go. So that's gonna continue to expand, and it's still, don't push for efficiency. That's not the goal of this system. That's not what the therapists want. They want to treat their patients correctly. And the patients also want to be treated correctly. That's still the main concern, not efficiency. Just wait. Okay? But at the end of this phase, you have therapists that now know when to use the system and how to use the system. It is now part of their skill set at the beginning. Okay? Which leads us to just a phase of natural organic growth, that we're not putting lots of effort and push into this, that the therapists, the physicists, the physicians, the conversations are happening, the knowledge is spreading throughout your clinic in an organic way. And again, do your homework. Find out where things are going. What are the questions that are coming up? What do people want to do next? What are people curious about? Find out those answers. Let it come to you. Okay? And this is the time, if you are not, an advanced center, if you don't have a friendly sister site somewhere that you can go and see it in action, go find one, okay? Here's a nice map of clinics that are tattoo-free, that have adopted this, they've gone through this. Go see it in action. Take your therapists that are unsure. Take your physicians, physicists that are unsure about it. Go somewhere and see it in action. It'll really, really help during this phase. Okay. During this phase, the therapists are going to start to actually want to use the system. They get it. They see the value. They're going to start solving problems with the system. We heard a talk earlier with mentioning a vac bag getting deflated. SGRT the rescue. That's happened at the clinics I've been at. I've talked to other people, it's happened at their clinics. You're going to start finding solutions with surface guidance that were never part of the plan, but naturally you can put those pieces together. Okay? And this is going to be kind of the culminating phase of the tension of the ones who want it and the ones that don't. Okay? The fast adopters are ready to go. They're tired of having these conversations. But the ones that are opposing it now feel the pressure. They know it's kind of inevitable, and so they're feeling the pressure that they're going to have to change. They're going to have to move on. So just work your way through that. And eventually it'll start to kind of simplify that. You'll hear the questions, why can't we just? Where now people feel encumbered by their current workflows, and they want to evolve. They want to make those big leaps and change their workflows where now the workflows, instead of accommodating surface guidance, embrace it and potentially even depend upon it for them to function. Okay? And this is the phase where it's now, if you bring on a new therapist, this is part of their competency checklist. As part of your prescribing radiation from your oncologist, surface guidance is now part of your clinic officially. Okay? Keep listening to your users, figure out where they want to go next. This is also the phase where instead of having the super therapist user with the weight of the world, well, we have to have her here on this machine on this day to do this, that knowledge is going to start spreading. And more people are going to build up. And eventually the weight of the world isn't on just one person's shoulders. It'll just melt away because it's normal. Focus on what's doing right, and those time efficiency gains, they come. You don't have to tell somebody work faster. They just do it. It naturally happens. This is when that natural evolution occurs, okay? And this is one of my favorite little things that during this phase, the therapists that are actually using the system the most, they'll start ignoring your tattoos. Even if the physicists and the physicians truly believe we're still tattooed, you know, that's how we do our patients, this is the correct way to do it. We're not ready to move on to that tattoo-free stuff. Well, talk to your actual therapist, because they'll be like, oh, we don't look at tattoos anymore. I don't know why we're still doing it. I don't use them. Okay? That can be a shocking thing if you're not in the room seeing your therapist actually set up patients. Okay? That said, this isn't all wonderful. The Royals Radiation Oncology Incident Learning System put out a themed report on surface-guided radiation therapy that at this point you know enough to do. You're doing a lot, you're changing a lot, and that's what actually introduces the possibility of errors. The conclusion of this report that surface imaging is a tool that has the potential to be a value additive and act as a safety barrier, which is wonderful. However, its value is dependent on the way in which it is implemented, and care must be taken when implementing any new technology to prevent the introduction of new error pathways. Okay? So now as the pushing super champion, again, now's your time to not push too fast. Make sure that you're doing it right. Focus on setting the foundation correctly. Okay? And when this is normal, when surface guidance is just how your clinic works, that you know how to use it, the efficiency has come, you're now ready to move on to what's probably my favorite phase, where you truly are owning the tool. That this is no longer an add-on, this isn't a thing you do on some patients or sometimes, that this truly is watching the therapist know exactly where to click, where the button is, how to do stuff. They can predict the behavior. They can predict how it's going to behave. Instead of consciously thinking about it, it's just natural. And this is kind of a magical time where you can do anything you want. You can make all the changes. You can update things. During this phase, if you haven't officially moved past tattoos and marks, this is the phase where now people will naturally understand what's possible. Last year, I gave a presentation on how that can impact your simulation workflow. So if you're struggling, if you're kind of stuck at this stage where like, how do we get over that hump? I've worked it through and we've deployed it across our clinics. Here's an example. There's other ways of doing it, but here's a place that you can go to make that next step. And finally, the therapists that are using the system, now they can't imagine not having this. That we heard talks yesterday and other people mentioned that there's therapists that I wouldn't work on a machine without surface guidance. They're now past that point where this is the only way that they want to treat their patients. And it is a little bit humorous hearing the therapists that previously hated the system, they opposed it. They were your opposition in that first phase. Now, they're some of your biggest supporters, that they've now come all the way around and they can't imagine treating without it. So the opportunities to say, I told you so, are going to come and be many, but you don't have to take them. You can just smile and nod and say, I'm glad you're with us. Okay? If there's any leftover hangers-on, physicians, physicists, therapists, now's the time to push. Push them over the line, normalize things. Get your workflows standardized for physicians, body sites, simplify during this phase, and if there's any loose ends, push through them. Okay? And finally, this is where surface guidance is now just part of your clinic. All day, every day, you rely on it, you trust it, you know how to use it. Okay? So the final culminating 7th phase is the not going back phase, that we've heard enough people mention that as well, that I can't imagine going back, I can't imagine not having this tool. And here's where you can just embrace the work that you've done, focus on your patients, and know that you're living in the future, where this is literally the CT controller computer for our CT sim. We spent lots of money on those CT lasers. That computer hasn't been turned on in 2 years. It's never gonna work again, and I love that, okay? So go through, clean things up. Clean out what's in your sim cabinets. Clean up your tattoo supplies. Decommission your lasers. Don't buy a new set of lasers for the next CT sim that you purchase, okay? Really embrace the work that you've done. Okay? If there's any double work left over, well, we're doing this and we're doing that, we're setting up this way, we're recording this and doing that, simplify. Let things go. Okay? The beauty of this phase is when you have the surface guidance in harmony with your immobilization and your imaging, your therapists are now armed with the best tools that we've been able to come up with to set up every single patient confidently every single day. That we've heard, if you lose your vac bag, well, that's fine. Between imaging and surface guidance, we can rebuild it. If your surface guidance system goes down, that question has come up enough times. Well, between your indexed immobilization, remember that part, and surface guidance, well, we know that we can get them really, really close and use our imaging to dial them in. That we have 3 different sources of information that work in harmony with each other in a way that's better than anything before it. Okay? And again, the only hard part here is truly letting go, is moving on, getting rid of that stuff, retiring those workflows, those processes, and embracing where you are. Okay? And finally, you're done, but you're also not done. There's gonna be something else that's gonna come around. We know that about this field. We saw the talk yesterday about dose RT. Maybe that's the next big thing. Maybe it'll be something else, but something else will come in and also run through your clinic, change everything up, and be ready to start this whole process over again with some new technology. Okay? And so that is the process that I've seen over and over again at different clinics, that this is kind of the human nature side of implementing surface guidance. But again, it's worth it. That we have thousands of patients that I'm entrusted with, the number of people in this room, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of patients are dependent on us guiding people through this, of us making these steps to get there because they depend on us for their care. So thank you very much.